Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of the Storyblok Community Chats. And this time, I think, not, I do not think, but actually, it is the eighth episode. Uh, I still remember when we started, we came up with different topics and ideologies with respect to the community chats in general. But I'm super happy that we are already on the eighth edition, and this time with a very new topic, I would say. Of course, we have been talking about different general topics around community, uh, developer communities in general, programs out there about getting good CFP talks, turning your passion to profession, inclusive communities, and so much more. But this time, kind of a topic which not many people have talked about in the past, and something which can be very crucial to understand the mindset of a developer and also to understand how this can be very effective. And I'm talking about developer education and training programs. So I would love to touch upon this particular topic, and for that we have a very special guest joining us. Let me quickly invite Ali Mustufa on stage. Hello, Ali, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How about you?
All good, all good. I'm happy to host you. And I was quite looking forward to this one because when I was thinking about this topic, I think you have been part of developer education programs by yourself for quite a long time now. You have kind of paved path under this particular topic, for many others in the community. So I think you would be the best person to talk about it. And even before jumping on to that, let's hear from you. If you could just let our audience know more about who you are, what you do, and what's something they can look forward to you.
Absolutely. So, hello everyone. My name is Ali Mustafa, and my typical way of saying hello is by waving a hand. So, if you are in front of your computer, please wave hands. So, myself Ali, and I work for Postman as of now as a senior developer advocate. And I've been kind of working with Postman for the last 3 years. Before that, I used to kind of do a lot of courses, workshops, and used to kind of do a lot of work around community. I'm a diploma graduate, and then I did my engineering. So as soon as I completed my diploma, I got a lot of technical knowledge, and I started applying it in different domains. I know AIML is so cool right now. I used to do it, from 2016, 2015. We used to do like amazing AIML workshops across India. Talking about my journey, I've traveled to around 60 plus cities across India, delivering more than 200 sessions. Before pandemic, in between pandemic, all virtual sessions, and so on and so forth. So I'm quite familiar with developers, education, and all of that, especially communities. Would love to definitely, if you would like to chat with me, I would love to kind of hear from you on any of the social media channels. I'm active almost everywhere. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Apart from all the work related stuff, I also do things for fun. Yeah, that sounds odd, but I still do. I watch Formula One a little bit when I get a little free, and to complement that, I do go karting. I'm a noob at it, but still, I try to touch grass once in a while.
No, I think that's fantastic. Everyone should, take out time to, do something which they love doing. That helps us keep our mental peace at place, honestly, because I
Absolutely.
know sometimes it can be a lot when we are too much involved in our professional lives. It's really very important to take some time out, let's say on weekends or holidays, to do something which we love doing as a hobby or as something out of passion. But yeah, thank you so much
Yeah.
for introducing yourself. I also kind of got to know more about you in this journey of yours when you were traveling across India in the nation, and you were delivering so many great workshops, educating the developers here in the communities. So that's how I also got to know more about you. And everyone who is listening to this particular stream, I can't agree more on the fact that how much Ali have added impact. Impact is still a small word, I feel, when I say, because the number of developers he has been able to educate throughout the country is just enormous. And I'm one of them, I can say, in some way or the other. So thank you so much, Ali, for joining in this particular live stream. Happy to have you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. For adding that. Absolutely my pleasure.
Awesome. Then, well, let's get started with the topic. And when I mention, the impact of DevEd and training programs, of course, the first question which comes up in my mind is to understand why developer education is really important, or why programs like training programs or where developers gets educated about, let's say, xyz topic, why is it
Yeah.
crucial in the current tech space? I know you have been educating developers since quite a while now, but why do you think it is really very important, and how does it impact the industry as a whole?
Absolutely. So if you see a life cycle of how new engineers come into market, right? The whole thing starts from someone kind of taking it, thinking about STEM, going and kind of learning about CS, and then basically spending 4 years and then becoming a developer, right? And then once they become a developer, a lot of product companies come and be like, hey, use our product, right? And and then basically if more users there are more users to your product, obviously you would make more money, you would kind of solve a problem, and the life cycle kind of continues, right? So basically this like untouched or untapped audience, which is there, who is just right now learning, and they're dedicating all their time to learning, right? Like the whole point of developer education is to tap into these audiences early on, so that when they are kind of starting to work, they are able to work with your product really well. They are able to solve real world problem, and not just about your product but about your industry, I would say. So more or less, if you see a company comes and talks about APIs, right? Okay, so if they only talk about their product, that's very limited knowledge, right? And not everyone would be interested to kind of hear about how their product works. But if you talk about APIs in general, people would be more inclined towards like, okay, I want to learn about APIs. APIs are amazing. Same, the whole industry will get shaped, meaning that all this untapped developer which we are kind of targeting right now, they're learning about APIs. They'll go to companies and then they'll talk about how APIs are important and so on and so forth, right? So it doesn't necessarily revolves around your product, but then educating developers actually kind of shapes the whole industry itself. Because now there are a lot of folks who are talking about this particular tech which your product is like very excited about. To add another example, you'll see a lot of people kind of talking about serverless cloud, and in that domain you'll see a lot of companies there which are like big players, small players. But then if you don't know about cloud, you wouldn't care any less about any other company offering a cloud platform. So yeah, that's why developer education is like very crucial at its core. That you're not just shaping someone's knowledge about your product, but you're actually shaping the whole industry in that direction.
Yeah, that make a lot of sense. And do you think it also resonates a lot with the fact of awareing the developers right from very beginning?
Yeah. So it also kind of adds to if you kind of look at from like a developer perspective. I would be happy to kind of know the trends as I'm going and venturing into my world. I would be more than happy to kind of learn about the recent trends, and if someone is kind of willing to take that effort to teach me in a course format, in a video format, in written documentation format, I would be more than happy to kind of consume it, and be like, okay, this is something which I would love to have, and I would be looking forward to. So yes.
Yeah, and I believe when you mentioned about different uh, kind of distribution materials, for example, or
Yeah.
the way of distributions like video documentation, that's where my next question comes in, because many times they're like the developer education is just the chronology here. There are
Yeah.
ways with which developers can be educated. So what do you think uh, is, or how would I say that? Because let's talk about the key components in general. In your opinion, what are the key components of a successful developer education? Maybe some factors that really needs to be taken care of while we are crafting any developer education programs out there.
Absolutely. So the first point is to kind of narrow down on what you are willing, what you want to teach, right? very essential. I see a lot of folks who will just go out there and be like, okay, I'm going to teach full stack development, right? Yes, let's go ahead and teach it. But then, what is your target audience? What is it that you want to kind of enable developers to do? If you're targeting, something like a very broad topic, there are consequences to it. For example, a full stack development, it is going to be a very lengthy course. You will most probably not cover all parts of, people will not be kind of, so excited to kind of go through all parts of it, 40 hours of video, 60 hours of video, and so on and so forth, right? So the first part is to kind of decide on a niche, which you feel is, like it is an intersection of what you are doing in your product and what is an industry standard, right? If you find that niche, you'll find that sweet spot. That is where you start, and you'll be like, okay, this is what I'm going to teach, right? In our case, let's say, I'm more inclined towards, sharing about APIs. So if I go ahead and I talk about, API security, it's possible that I might have an audience there, but not majority of them, are directly jumping to security. But a lot of them are jumping to how APIs work, like very simple. There are tons of videos about it as well. But then what are we going to do differently, right? So here we start designing the components. We choose a niche, and then we are like, okay, what kind of material do we want to develop? Do we want to let's do small 10, short form videos, right? 30-second each, 3-minute content, let's do that. Or else I want to do long form content, so I'm going to go ahead, create a video course, right? I'll kind of see the views as a matrix. I'll see the plays as a matrix. Or else I'll go ahead and create, work with the CMS and directly put it across the course, ask people to register, complete the course, get a certificate. So in that case, I can map through the whole journey of the user, right? And then, obviously, whenever you're designing content, it kind of, also kind of brings you back to what your goal is. So if your goal is to just make something quick, and keep adding more information, then in that case, you're targeting a completely different matrix. But if your goal is to have the user engaged and basically, tap into, let's say, if the user did not discover my course and directly went ahead and did X. It also, so I was giving an example of how you track it, right? How you, if your goal is that by my teaching, if the developer is able to work, on a particular technology in a more better way, then that becomes like a viable product which you can take it to your leadership and say that, hey, we want to do this because, by doing this, the developer is more proactive, we reduce hours, we add value, and so on, create an ROI, for your company, for the user and everyone else, right? So that's the point, of designing like a complete end-to-end ecosystem where you're not just kind of going ahead and pumping content. So content creation is very different than mapping an education system. Content creation is more like you go ahead, pick a niche, create a content, and you worry little about likes. You worry little about what kind of like impact it is going to have, but you are just pumping content and you're like, okay, I'm going to go talk about, what is ABC, explain it, that's about it, right? And if people love it, people love it. If not, it's a hit and a miss. So that's absolutely fine. So that's very different than designing education programs because now you're not just worried about that one shot, but you're looking very long term. So that's why you will see that, a lot of companies have invested 10, 12 years to develop their education program, which are now like very much popular. People love it. People give examples of it because they have invested so much time to kind of shape it, and they're not just creating content, but they are actually creating like proper education programs.
Yeah, that so much makes sense because it's not the game of one night, or one day,
Yeah,
when a developer education becomes successful. And I think you mentioned a lot of times, in this previous section of yours, that the numbers, the number of signups, the turnout, the developer journey in general is something that really matters a lot. It's not just about hit and miss, it's about how it eventually gets successful. And which
yeah,
also brings me to another point, about measuring the impact. So
Yes.
while all of this is happening, while we are curating this program in general, while we are understanding the developers' needs and accordingly, paving the path, how do you measure the success and impact of developer education? Because not every time it would be possible for us to, have everything in our control. So what are those key metrics that we definitely should, keep a track of, let's say as a company,
Yeah.
as an organization?
Absolutely. So it is absolutely necessary to justify your spendings. It obviously, when we say that I'm going to go ahead and let's say create a developer program, it is very important to justify it to your leadership, to everyone else, like even to yourself when you are, let's say, you are going and investing and doing that. It's very important that what is your goal, and quantifying it. Again, not everything is quantifiable, but then as much as you quantify, you will get, more proof, you will get more, confidence to say that this program works, right? Um, just to give you two examples. One, let's say I am, an individual, and I go ahead, I invest 1 lakh, INR, or somewhere around, let's say, $1,500, and I am kind of going and creating some content around education, right? As a person, I would be like, okay, it's my money, let's go ahead, smoke it. But if I do that works, right? I can go ahead, create 10 videos, hire editors, have the research done, and kind of do all of that, and it will work for, let's say, 3 months, 6 months. But can I pump that amount of money every 3 months? No, without justifying it to myself and saying that, hey, Ali, why are you doing this, right? The same happens with companies when they start education program. Initially company will be like, okay, go ahead, $100,000, fine. But they'll give you, for a year, and that's fine. But then after a year, your job is also at a risk, not just the money you're getting. Obviously, it will start from cutting budgets to getting your budget and yourself. Very important to justify all of this, and
Hmm.
that's why we start by quantifying each items and understanding what my goal is, right? So if to kind of reiterate on that individual example, like if I'm an individual, I'd be like, okay, I'm getting more reach, I'm able to get advertisers, I'm becoming an influencer, so I am making, let's say, half that money via sponsored post, right? So now the economics to me is, if I pump in this amount of money every 3 months, I'm able to 2x my business, 3x my business. I'm able to make more money, and at the end of the day, I'm able to kind of create like a whole small ecosystem for me and my team, like my editors and all of them, right? Works like a charm. So here you can see that we quantified stuff, and then we justified it via money as an ROI, right? um, necessarily doesn't happen in that case, from a company perspective. And obviously, in this small, ecosystem, we are not changing industries, but we are just creating content. We are creating education, and we might be, impacting a lot of students. Obviously, a lot of developers in that process, definitely. But that is not our goal. Our goal is to get more advertisers so that our revenue keeps coming, and then we keep kind of pumping money and doubling it down, right? Now, when you kind of take a step back and look at it from a company perspective, company would be like, okay, I don't want to make money from it. Education is a key part of our vision, and it is also something which the industry I'm part of. I, as a company, it's my responsibility to educate people or developer in that particular industry. So from a company perspective, when they kind of set goals, initially they'll be like, okay, go ahead, research, right? And then come back and tell us what people think, right? So you go ahead, launch some blogs, launch some videos, spend on production, and then you come back and be like, okay, there are 100 people watching our videos. There are 100 commands, there are 1,000 signups. There are people from these countries, these demographics, and from that we are confident that they are educated to XYZ levels, right? And then the company will be like, okay, this sounds promising, let's go ahead and double down on the efforts, right? And then create like more, have bigger team, target individual regions, and expand in the true sense, right? So to kind of sum it up, it is important to quantify stuff. It's important to directly relate it to the industry standards, So what is it that you will consider a success matrix in your particular industry? In my case, I'll tell you, if I'm going ahead and if someone is learning about APIs, that's a success for me, right? But if they are completing my certification, that's super success for me, right? I can be like, okay, one person kind of came in, completed the whole course, got certified, plus one. Now they share it on social, plus one. Now they invite their friends, have referrals, plus one, right? Their friends invite their friends, right? So you see, the end goal is to create a loop, right? And if I'm able to create a successful loop, then I'll call this like a super successful program. Or else if I have to bring a swag every time I want someone to do a course, not gonna work, right? Because you're not going to have money to spend and bring swag every single time and incentivize it, in monetary ways, right? If you're getting someone into your system for let's say $1, that should be free because you're already spending on the course, you're already spending on the employees, you're already kind of doing a lot of you know like planning and deploying cash in a segment which is not guaranteed to to your company to kind of you know generate revenue or generate income. It might happen in the future, but right now your company is not getting anything out of it. So it is very important to quantify all of this and kind of create a justification so that your company keeps investing in these programs.
Yeah, I think that's a well put it thought, and I agree with the fact because when it comes to proving the resources that you have been using in
Yeah,
exchange to the finances put it in, I think that's very crucial, and it needs to be taken care of right from the beginning. It shouldn't like always be like you start experimenting and forget about the turnout at the same time. But yeah,
absolutely.
I think this also answers the question from talking in the chat. He did ask about, would love to know more about how companies look at dev ed programs. But yeah, um, on that note, like this has been more about developer education in general, right? How do
Yeah,
we define it? What metrics to consider? What are the key components? And all of these things. Now, one thing which you mentioned is that it's a long process. Companies do take a lot of years to build that
yeah,
program, build that education base for their developers or for their communities. In this period, I'm sure that there might be evolutions, updates in technologies, in the way developers might love to learn something new, or advancements in different approaches. How do you tackle that situation? Because in such a rapidly evolving tech environment nowadays, all these developer education programs, they just, how do you, what approach do you have to adapt through it, uh, and just continue building on top of what you're doing?
absolutely. I guess the key here is, what. So we talked about like long-term goals, right? So if you see, a company who has invested in education for over 10 years, they have created content 10 years back, most probably, right? And you're like, okay, if you are going right now and you don't update them, definitely the developers will like, okay, this is outdated. We don't want to be part of this, developer education community because it's outdated in nature. Working at the core of developing education programs, I can kind of, tell you very confidently that you have to make a plan to not just create new content and create new education programs, but also maintain the existing ones. That's why it's very important to not just create and leave something. If you are doing that, you're not an education program, you are a content creator. So you are just creating content and you're just keeping it there, and yeah, that's about it. People will come look at it, they'll be happy about it, or they'll see, okay, it's outdated, they'll just leave it. But if you are actively developing an education program, it's very essential for you to kind of go ahead. And when the industry evolves, you evolve with the industry. Your program evolves. Right? So if today ChatGPT is there, right? So if you are going to create an education program, why not instead of competing, why not leverage it and be like, okay, let's say my FAQ will be now powered by AI, and I'm going to go ahead use ChatGPT or any other similar models which are open source, and work with LLMs and kind of incorporate that. into my own education program, so that people don't feel left out. And definitely, when you are targeting a broader aspect of things, it's very difficult to keep track. So if you are going ahead and you're like, okay, I'm going to develop, the example we should took earlier was of full stack tools. You'll be like, okay, now people are adopting Go. People earlier, were not that, like you would never see Go as a part of full stack developer courses a lot of times, right? It would be more like after you have learned it from, JavaScript, you go ahead and then you explore Go or other languages. But now you'll see that a lot of developers are like, hey, learn full stack development with Go, right? As a backend, go ahead, let's learn about a new database. Let's, go and, talk about all new format of, cloud services. So if you are targeting like a very broad, spectrum, then there are a lot of new, front ends. There are a lot of new backends. There are a lot of new databases. Now you have to update three things. And not just that, you have to also be, like you have to also update not just the like the written content, but every source of the content which exists, right? So to maintain, obviously, a uniformity, you are also kind of going to update the blogs, write new blogs, to complement that, bring in new folks and kind of do all of that. So, if you're targeting a broader aspect, then it becomes very difficult. You have to have a large team and justify having that, and then kind of, keep adding stuff and, keep updating it. That's your duty. But when you are focusing on a small niche, the detours you have to take are very small. Yeah, like to give you an example, AI is booming right now. If you are into, let's say, a back-end development, industry, and you're like, okay, now we are going to go ahead and develop like, a simple, payment gateway. You kind of create content around it. You're all good. It was working fine. And then the AI buzz came in, right? And you're feeling left out. That my content is about, backend, and AI is taking all the limelight. Don't worry. Take AI out of it and add fraud detection inside your post. And now people are like, okay, AI is here also. So I get to learn new. You develop your program one step further. And then you're like, okay, you keep adapting to the industry standards that keeps your learners engaged. You foster a community which is updated, on the industry trends, and not just like, like 20-year back curriculum. Then there's no difference between you and colleges, right? Because this is acting like a college, right? Whatever curriculum was said by someone, I'm going to just, take it up and teach that and then move forward, right? So it's very essential to kind of keep a track of that, update it, and kind of form your goals around it. Also, it is important from a long-term perspective to, you know, kind of show that to your leadership that, hey, the program which we are working on, it is going to take 3 years to at least see some impact, or 2 years to at least see some impact, right?
Hmm.
Because a lot of times what will happen is you'll go ahead, you will, be very confident about, I'll create some impact in 1 year. You kind of take the funding, have the team set up, everything is working. But then after 1 year, you're not able to justify the numbers. And you realize that, okay, it takes time, to get in all the required metrics which you promised. um, you know, Companies will cut down, on that. Companies will be like, okay, this is extra cost. We'll let, marketing do it. We'll let, our documentation team handle some parts of it. We don't need a dedicated, a developer education program for that. So it's
Yeah,
very essential to communicate that length also.
true, true. Yeah, I think, and also, while all of this is happening, it's also really very important to understand what our developers need. Having that feedback loop always open and flexible for them to reach out to you and let you know what are their requirements, or maybe you having that liberty to reach out to your developer communities, run a survey, asking them right question and
Yeah,
understanding where they are coming from. I think that also helps, like what's the need of an hour, and accordingly,
absolutely.
finding the way out. But yeah, thank you so
Yeah,
much for adding all of those things. I think we talked about process evolution. One
yeah,
little thing I wanted to touch base on was about the approach. Now, developer education can be of different kinds, and for me, right from very beginning, I really loved on the practical approach of learning new things, of getting educated. So, how important is hands-on or practical learning? is in the developer education space, or what are those approaches that you found personally to be most effective when educating developers the right way?
Absolutely. So I say this right now, like, if you asked me the same question, like when I was in 2017 and developing stuff, I would be like, hey, don't develop on Twitter. No one watches it. Okay. Don't, go about posting, Instagram stories or Instagram post or, like do all of that. And I'd be like, okay, develop, hands-on courses and go to colleges and deliver it, set up a classes, set up a space where people can come and, do all of that, right? Now that is, so I've seen both sides of the coin when the digital platforms did not, like have that much of active users to, like right now where everyone is online and everyone is like, on Twitter or, on Instagram or on different social media platforms, right? So as you are kind of going ahead and you are talking about how should I go ahead and develop a program which targets hands-on and hands-off both, because in today's world both are important, right? So let's say my strategy personally is that I'm not going to leave them at any platform, right? So my idea would be, okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a hands-on course. I'm going to have that knowledge imparted to them via hands-on, as much as possible. But then I'm not going to leave all the other platforms just because they are hands-on. So my whole target is to drive them to hands-on, and to drive them to hands-on, we will use all these platforms to create content, which then prompts them to action. So it's very essential. So if you see the online completion rate of courses, it's very less. It's somewhere around 20% or less than that. Even internationally, it's like very less in compared to people enrolling to a course and then completing the course, right? Now, a few reasons for that is obviously, people don't like to just sit here and watch an hour-long video when they can watch, 20 reels in that period of time. So people don't have that much of attention span right now where they are going to sit and watch your keynote for 2 hours on a screen. They are not going to do that. They are going to probably scroll in their mobile phone after 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and they are distracted there. So it's essential that when you're developing, a developer program, education program, the whole point of that is, obviously it is like there's no question of hands-on. It is the most or the most essential part of your education program, because without that you cannot justify a lot of things, right? As soon as you go hands-on, you define product, you define the time taken on that product, you define a lot of matrices which companies value a lot, right? Which where the companies are interested that, okay, how much time this user is spending on my product because of your course, how much active this particular user is, before taking your course, after taking your course, right? And all of that imparts a lot of metrics for the company themselves. So they would definitely want you to be hands-on. And obviously, a hands-on approach also imparts, a lot of knowledge into individual developers, where they are not just like reading through documentation forever, or going through, just reading tutorials and being like, okay, this is how you make login, or this is how you do sign up. But can you kind of integrate, create an app which can do login, sign up, forget password, all of that as a small project for to us, instead of just teaching them how to do login and how to do sign up. But not to forget, doing that is also important, because if there's an experienced developer and who comes and like, why are you teaching me this course? I just need a code to go ahead and create a sign up page. Just give me that code. I don't want you to kind of involve me in this life cycle and give me all that other things. I just want that code. So both are important. You can see that in the second case where the developer is experienced and they are coming back to your documentation, they are able to kind of read something, and it's completely hands-off in nature, but they kind of get the vibe of it. They go back and they are implementing stuff, and they get an idea. So it's very important to cater to all kinds of audiences. And today, in today's world, obviously it's very important to have strategies to funnel them down into your like hands-on course.
Yeah.
Because if you're not able to do that, you're not able to funnel them, then that's very difficult for you to justify, because you cannot justify post views or likes and so on. You need to kind of justify more concrete evidence.
Yeah, true. And I believe, like, of course, hands-on content or hands-on learning is one aspect, and hands-off is at the same time really very important, which you mentioned. uh,
Yeah,
One thing which I believe is that if it works for them, it works out, it's like,
yeah,
if
absolutely.
I'm a developer, I would just go ahead and look for what I am looking. And in today's world, there's just so much content out there, but
Yeah,
the real education is somewhere which I, as a developer, will definitely filter out for myself. That is
absolutely.
my choice as a developer, that what works for me. uh, but yeah, I
Yeah,
think, one point which can be added here is to read, or to read, not redistribute, but distribute your content the right way. For example, let's say
yeah,
currently we are hosting a live stream. This will be recorded and uploaded as a video after editing. We can create shorts out of it. We can create a recap blog out of it. We can write a Twitter thread for this. So there are just so many ways to redistribute your single content, and I think that allows every kind of developer to just get the gist of what this content was all about and get educated ultimately. uh, this again brings me to my another question, which is very important, but many a times we kind of, I would not say not focus, but miss out on. It's the point of accessibility, right? In
yeah,
today's world, inclusivity, diversity is something really very important. And when it comes to developer education, what are your ways that you keep in mind to promote inclusivity and diversity in any developer education program, which ultimately ensures that the opportunities which we provide are accessible to a wide range of individuals? Just like you mentioned, that an experienced developer might be looking for something else, and someone who is just getting started will have a total different mindset. So what factors to consider to make your program accessible for everyone?
absolutely. I guess accessibility is like it should be core part of everything which you do. Definitely, because now this is the time where we are living. Where there are more awareness, right? So it's not like earlier there were very less awareness that okay, why would someone who's like would kind of go ahead and use a computer or use a mobile phone and do all of that, and we would just focus on that 80% audience, where we say that okay, this is where we are going to focus, and we are just going to leave 20% out of the picture because we would not even think about them, right? But in today's world, definitely that is a point which you will see again and again at a lot of places, even conferences which talk about accessibility and enabling more folks, and a diverse group to kind of do that. And if you kind of see, we discussed a point earlier that when you're measuring, metrics, obviously it is important that you focus on these metrics as well. And that is like like the start of everything, because when you're defining the program, define the metrics, and you're like, okay, how diverse is my program? How accessible is my program? And all the metrics which are generating will actually give you the answer that if you have all your programs targeted towards one specific region or one part of or one community of that particular region, you might not be getting an unbiased review. You'll be like, okay, everyone loves my product in India, let's go ahead and launch it in US. No, it doesn't work like that. So it's very essential that like we kind of do all of that, and the first way of doing it is to acknowledge it. And then the second point which you'll kind of do as an action item is to evaluate what content you're kind of pumping. So let's say you are a developer education program, you go ahead and you create a course. Now you go ahead and you create videos, but is your videos transcripted? Okay, for people who cannot hear, can they read it? Okay, if they can read it, is it accurate? Or are you using an AI bot which just kind of generates your, transcript, and it just, add gibberish in between, right? Okay, so all of this, starts from what content you're, starting to kind of develop. So if you're posting an image on social media and you are driving them, does it have and all text on it, right? if you are designing websites, your course is on a website, it's a reader website, but then can you go ahead and make it like make it in a way where the browsers can read it and make it more accessible for users, right? So a lot of times it will happen that I've seen this personally happen to in a lot of developer education programs, is that they would create all of that, and then what they would do is they would not use the right tags, and they would just kind of paste the image of the text on the website, right? So now when your accessible tool is kind of starting to read, it starts to read the first line, and then there's an image. Now it cannot read the image, so it will skip it and directly at the end, right? So visually it looks good, looks perfect. But then, it is very essential that you test these things out, and you are, targeting, and you are also taking feedback. So what I've seen, a lot of folks do is they think, they know what accessibility means, because they are not in that category. They're like, okay, I have everything, so I can think for them, I can imagine what problems they might face, but it's not that easy to envision something which you have never done, right?
Yeah.
If you have never walked without your without saying, obviously you will be like, how how would you imagine the problems the person is facing? You'll never imagine that. You can just think about it, that okay, they might be imagining these problems, and thinking about it, I can implement it in my product.
Yeah.
No. It's essential that you go to a person, you involve them, you talk with them, you understand what problems they are facing, and then you incorporate that into your product,
Yeah.
right? A very good example I'll give you is of sign language. A lot of folks develop a lot of AI projects and say that, okay, we are developing a sign language project. It can detect, sign language. Okay, looks good. You ask them questions. Okay, which sign language can it detect? They're like, what do you mean with sign language? And there's only one. No. So there are tens. Even in India, we don't have one. We have a lot of different sign languages which are adopted. Across US there's a standard, but across India there's a lot of different versions of it. Same, you go to different country, you'll find different versions of it.
Hmm.
So um, the more you talk, the more you talk to your target audience, if you want to make your program truly accessible, this is the way. You go ahead, you talk to them, you implement that feedback. And in today's world, no one can go and tell that, hey, I don't have the technology to do it. That's an excuse, I would say, that you don't have a technology to do it. Yeah, if you're not targeting accessibility, that's a different point altogether, right? As I told you, like a lot of developer programs, they don't have the budget to do that.
Correct.
But even then, there's no point in kind of taking an image which has text written on it and directly pasting it in your course, because you are by default making accessibility like you are just taking a U-turn on that,
Yeah.
even though you don't have the budget to do it.
Yeah.
And in a lot of times, you don't need a lot of budget to do it. So yeah,
True. Yeah. It's always about the will and the approach. Not many a times it's required for you to have the budget. I think it's also about how you
yeah,
cater it, how you plan it well, and your how well you understand your developers communities, which you're delivering that
absolutely,
education to. Yeah, well said. I think uh, moving ahead, it's kind of very important, not just for the developer educators or programs like these, but also developers to put their point ahead. What are the requirements, so that bridge between the organization and the developers, that can be formed, and it ultimately helps each other to understand, okay, what's lacking. And
absolutely,
I have seen many such instances where this has been considered. Of course, one thing which you mentioned about the script which comes in, let's say for the videos, where people
yeah,
who cannot hear can read it out. And especially the sign languages. That's so true. I've seen some of the conferences doing that more recently, and I think that's a great start for considering the accessibility and keeping that in mind. So yeah, for anyone watching, if you have any ideas, feel free to tag us and share more about it, and would love to know your thoughts on this. And Last question that I would like to cover. I see we are almost on time, but this can be something important. We talked about multiple factors, but it's a long journey. It's not as like we both mentioned. It's not about, let's say, one day, 1 week, month, or a year. It's a long process, and I'm sure there comes a lot of challenges. A lot of setbacks, a lot of failures, a lot of experimentation which we go through. So what are those general challenges which an organization might encounter or commonly face while implementing all of these programs in place, and how can these challenges be addressed? Is it
Yeah,
is it very is it not good to have those challenges? Because from what I understand, it's important to understand what not to do. You know,
yeah.
but what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. So as you can see that, this is when you talk about developer education, it is not, like an hour's job or like, even a year's job in most of the cases. It's a long journey. And if you set the foundation wrong, then, it is like, you are setting the bottom stage of the rocket, launcher like wrong. And you are, designing the satellite really well, but then once it takes off, it just bursts into flame, right? Because the core of your rocket is not ready. It's not, in shape. And that's why it's very important to do all these mistakes when you are at the foundation level, right? It's good to not just, you know, do do your best and directly put it and launch it. Instead, work on the engine, make it reliable, test it 10 times, and then take off, right? So what I see in today's world is that startup will come, raise $1 million in funding, go ahead, hire 10 people, put them in developer education program, tell them, hey, deliver us in 1 year. We need X number of devs. We need this. We need that. And then in that hurry, the foundation is set wrong, right? So what they would do is they would go ahead. They would try the easy to go ways. They'll hire influencers. They'll kind of do all sort of thing to kind of get that eyeball. But then as soon as the ship takes off, it will burst into flames. You'll not see any real impact. And then the company will be like, we don't need developer education programs because anyway we invested so much money, we hired influencers, do all of that, and what is the result? We are no.
Oops, seems like there's some network problem from Ali's end.
Yeah.
Are we back? No worries. Let's stay tuned for a while. It's just a bad day for the network, I would say. I'll allow Ali to take some time on this. I'll just. Um, cool. But, anyways, for everyone watching, I hope this has been something interesting for you to know. We're almost in the live end of the live stream. So, we'll be summing up soon. If you have any question, feel free to add those into the chat and we can pick that up. I see Ali's back online. Let's have him again. Hello.
Oops. Sorry for that.
No worries.
But yeah. So where did I cut off?
Yeah, even I'm wondering that. No, it's about the
Yeah.
challenges that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you an idea, let's say, when we started our Discord server, it was new, things are happening, everything, was going on. And then suddenly, I went ahead to a settings in member zone and I pruned the server. Now for those who do not know Discord, that's a setting which you should not touch, right? But, we were developing it, we were new to it, we went ahead, we pruned it. In a moment's time, you know, thousands of members lost, right? No way to recover it, no way to, go ahead and, be like, hey, we put in like so many months to, get to that X number. And it's down by not hundreds, but thousands, right? So again, good that we did that mistake right now, because imagine a server with 100,000 users and then doing that function. Now that's a big mistake. You cannot do it. But now that we know that this could happen, we have set up, guidelines around that is the red zone. Who is allowed to go into that red zone, right? What are the protocols when you are kind of doing that? Okay, and all of that. So again, important to do mistakes early on and set your team. And obviously, it is also very important to have a team which is focused on, which is like expert in each, section of things. In our case, it would be very essential or very good if we go ahead and hire a Discord, expert who could tell us about all these things at once, and then we would be happy to kind of, go ahead, set up a server, everything works fine for us. But then we learned it. Yes, we learned it. We learned it the hard way. If we hired someone who could do it and tell us, um, much better, right? So it is, again, a skill issue. It is again, a point where you have to do mistakes to learn new things. So if I never committed that mistake, I would have never known that. Now, if companies come to me and ask me, "Hey, we are creating a Discord server. What are your recommendations, suggestions, and cautions?" You know what I tell them, right? That hey, stay away from. But you don't know what it does, but definitely it does something which you'll not be pleased to know after
Yeah.
that happens.
You see
Um,
that button, do not press it.
exactly.
Press
Yeah, I get a meme on my like backend, but I'm not able to explain it. But yeah, very good Indian movie. So very essential to make mistakes early on, because in long term creating these mistakes is going to cost you money, a lot of time. So imagine, forget about the money, right? Imagine, the members, how much time it will take me to build that server again if it
it. Yeah.
was a 100K server. If it is small, now I'm building it, I'm okay with it, my company is okay with it, they're like, okay, let's go ahead, build it out. We did not lose that many members, we were fine with it, right?
Yeah.
And again, like understanding that and having that attitude that okay, I'm going to do all the major aspects of things beforehand, I'll try out all of the things beforehand.
Mm.
So the example I gave you of the rocket, it's essential that you try out the booster a lot of times, and then you invest 2x 3x in kind of marketing it and developing a larger team, replicating that programs in multiple aspects and doing all of that. And that's why running beta programs is very important
Mm.
to kind of understand what challenges you'll have, to kind of try it out with a small set of groups, and then kind of expand it slowly, launch it for the general public, have a continuous loop of feedback of what they're telling you to improve in your program, how it can become better, what content they like, what they dislike, and all of that.
Mm.
And that becomes like the core of your program. And once the core is made, it is like very I'll say it is very rare that after 10 years you realize that the core is set wrong, because if your core is set wrong, your program is not run for 10 years,
Yeah.
right? It will run for a year or two. But if your core is strong, then there's very little mistakes you can make while like going ahead and marketing your program, right? So there are two aspects of it. The first aspect is to develop the program, develop metrics, measure it, justify the program. And now that you have done all of that, you have a case to present to your company leadership. They have time to review it, and then they give you the budget to kind of go ahead and just expand it everywhere. And now you adopt new methodologies. You work with different groups, and you expand your program.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we were having this chat once, and you did mention about the Discord thing which happened, and
Yeah,
that was definitely my learning as well. And I would like to share here that uh, documenting your failures or documenting the mistakes is also important, and at the same time sharing it with
absolutely.
people around you who are kind of in the same domain also helps not only to improve your program of educating developers but also other people's trying out. So I think that was a learning for me as well, who did not even thought of in that direction. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think those are the challenges, and I believe with mistakes we learn, and it's always a fresh beginning. It's always a good thing to start again instead of just thinking what went wrong. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. With that, we are almost in the end of this particular community chats. Uh, Thank you so much, Ali, for sharing all of these insights. I'm definitely gonna go back and take a look on all these insights which you have shared, and I'm sure all our audience members who are watching right now or who might watch it later, they find it interesting as well. So in case you do, feel free to tag us online and share that with us about your thoughts, your feedbacks, or anything that you would like to share with us. And also, if you feel like this can add value to someone else's journey, please do share it with them as well. Uh, Before we actually end this, Ali, do you have any closing remarks for this particular topic?
Well, I would say this as so. I'll give closing remarks about developers and companies who are building developer programs. So one is that if you are a company who are focusing on developer education, the very first thing you need to do is kind of set up a team and let that team kind of take time and kind of work on the core of the program and kind of enable that like if you want to see impact, give them time, give them resources, and you will see the results definitely in the longer term. It will definitely help not just your product but the overall industry itself, right? Because no one is industry does not spend money to kind of educate developers. You are the ones who are part of that industry who is going to spend that to kind of create next gen of developers. And for developers, it's essential that you participate in these programs and provide your honest feedback, right? uh, Definitely, we know you come for swags, but with swags come with really good feedback, which can improve these programs for a lot of other folks who are new to this industry. And definitely, you play a very important role, more important role than producers, because without you, the loop is very empty. And it's more like they are just generating content which no one is consuming. But with your feedback, it sets in the right direction. As much as a responsibility is of the company to kind of create a right developer program, it is a similar responsibility of consumers to kind of point that company in that direction and say that okay, we are loving this, we are not loving this, or how you're going to shape this. So yeah, that's about it from my side.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ali, for sharing that. And would love to catch up on this topic and hear more of your feedbacks once in a while. Of course, we hope to meet you soon in person and let's chat more about it. But thank you so much for coming and taking out this time and sharing all of these wonderful topics and insights and your perspective, most importantly, with our audience and with the developers who might watch this particular recording later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Love the conversation.
Awesome. Cool. Well, everyone, this was about Storyblok Community Chat 8, the impact of DevEd and training programs. I believe there were a lot of points that we touched upon, right from understanding importance of DevEd at first place, the key component that we should consider, how to measure impact the right way, all how to, adapt to the changes of technology, hands-on learning, inclusivity, accessibility, and so many more other things, including the challenges out there. uh, I'm sure that must be something that you take away home from this. In case we missed out on something, please let us know. You can always tag us online. You can let us know what interesting topics that you would like to hear from us. On that note, I have some things to talk about the upcoming live stream, because I know we are doing this on weekly basis and we still have so much more in our bag. So having said that, we have Code and Chill, which is a different show that we run. This is community chat. Code and Chill is all about live coding and a lot more interesting aspects about different frameworks, Storyblock, and their integration. So we are going to do about React and Storyblock, and this is happening next week, which is Monday, 4th of December, same time, 9:30 p.m. IST and 6 p.m. CEST. So feel free to register using this QR code. After that, we have the next edition of Community Chats coming up on 15th of December, and that is about rising from the burnout. I'm sure both of these topics are going to be super interesting, and more interesting is going to be the conversations around it. With that being said, I think I have done my part of hosting it. I'll also share a quick link of Storyblock events. So, all the upcoming events that you want to know about, this is your place to head over to. So, feel free to check that out. And Make sure you follow us on Twitch so that you get notified whenever we go live. And thank you so much for joining in. I'll take time to say bye, and I hope to see you in upcoming live streams super soon. Take care and have a great rest of your day and weekend, more importantly. Bye bye.